I'm your host, Rico Muhammad. I will be joined here shortly by my co host, Mr. Chuck Snow. But before we do that, let's jump over into this week's making a return, the DAT trend lines report. They seem to have updated the report on us finally. So this week we have spot rates declining following a 1 week surge after the Thanksgiving holiday. After a surge in activity the week after Thanksgiving, spot market volumes fell last week with a lower load to truck ratio on DAT1 network, signaling a spot market, softer spot market. As a result, national averages for dry vans, reefers, and flatbeds, all three segment types, declined. So we're showing that right now the current price for diesel fuel checks in at $4.97 per gallon. That is a 3.4% drop from the previous week's averages. And jumping over into, let's see here, we're going to go and jump and see how the rates were performing on the spot market, starting out with the dry van portion of the reports. And looking up in the upper northeastern corridor, we're showing an average outbound rate for dry vans checks in at $2.27 per mile on average. Moving down south into the mid-Atlantic and southeastern states, we're showing an average outbound rate for dry vans at $2.30 per mile. Moving back up into the Midwest, we're showing average outbound spot market rates for dry vans at $2.67. Coming in at the South Central region of the United States, we're showing average rates for dry vans at $2.30. And wrapping up, coming out of the West Coast, we're showing average outbound spot market rates for dry vans at $2.31. Shifting gears, jumping over to the skateboard or the flatbed portion of the report. We're showing that the average outbound spot market rate for flatbeds coming out of the northeastern pocket corridor at $2.76. Moving down to the southeast and mid-Atlantic states, we're showing an average outbound spot market rate of $2.84. Moving out of the Midwest, we're showing an average outbound rate for flatbeds at $3.04. Moving down to the South Central portion of the United States, we're showing an average rate of $2.82. Checking in out of the West Coast, we're showing an average outbound rate for flatbeds at $2.44 per mile. And wrapping up the report, coming out of with the reefer report, coming out of the northeastern corridor, we're showing an average outbound rate of $2.58. Moving out of the southeast and mid-Atlantic states, we're showing an average rate of $2.45. Moving out of the Midwest, we're showing average rate for reefers at $3.27. Moving out of the South Central region of the United States, we're showing an average outbound rate for reefers at $2.81. And moving out of the West Coast, we're showing an average outbound rate checking in at $2.69. And without any further ado, I'm going to welcome my co-host into the show. Good evening, Chuck. How are you?
We're doing well, Rico. I'm excited for tonight's show. This is going to be a really good show with our guest, Jane Jazrawy. She knows a lot of stuff, so it should be. She's the CEO and co-founder at Carrier's Edge, which is an online learning platform, very well recognized expert in training for drivers. Now, let's bring Jane on because I don't want to say anything that I don't know about. But my understanding is that this is for experienced drivers. They're not a training school for somebody that wants to get class their Class 8 license or their AZ or their Class 1. Good evening, Jane. Thank you so much
Hey,
for joining us.
I'm very happy to be here. Pleasure.
So just to make things, to set things straight, these courses that you offer, these online courses, are definitely for people that already have their CDL license, correct?
Well, let me just throw in a couple of confusing things here. Okay, so our customers range from individuals to very, very small, 5 drivers, 20 driver fleets, up to, we have customers who are very large,
Right.
and not because they kind of find us and then they are our customers, whether we like it or not. But we have really always been focused on small companies and definitely individuals. So we don't have an entry level driver program per se, but there's a lot of fleets who use our courses in their entry level program. So it can be, so our content can be used by people who don't know anything to people who have had a lot of experience. And what they find is with our content, it's very different than a lot of the online training that you get, because we get more into in depth. So there are things, we'll tell you why things are happening, and we will tell you what the big picture is of things like hours of service or hazmat or cargo securement and that kind of thing. So does that
So
make...
before we get too far down the road, let me do a little bit of housekeeping really quickly.
Sure.
I want
Who am
everyone.
I?
I want to let everyone remind everyone, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell. That helps out the algorithm for YouTube. Tonight we're trying a little bit of a different format because we're also live streaming simultaneously to Instagram, so our screen may look a little bit different than what it normally looks. We try to we're trying to integrate the new system that we have here, so that when we're broadcasting, it is much easier for Instagram to be able to receive the podcast, because a lot of times previously we had just me and Chuck, and people will be for the screen. So at least now you see everyone stacked onto but see everyone. If you have a question for tonight, or if you have a comment, always remember, you can always just type it in the chat, whichever platform that you're watching this on, whether you're on Facebook, Twitter, type it in. We'll be able to see your question and your comment, and we'll try to answer them as we go on the show. All right, I'm sorry about that. I just had to kind of get that out.
Oh, I feel like I'm on vacation, because I just have to sit here and let someone else do all the controls. This is nice. I'm like, woohoo! I don't have to do anything.
Just for an hour.
No, and then I have to go back and make decisions.
Jane, I got to ask you before we even, you started this company with your partner in 2005. Is that correct? Sort of.
Again, this is a complicated answer. I came from tech. I was working as I was a software trainer back in my past life, and I really liked. It was called distance learning at the time, but I really liked creating things and then having other people consume it, but not, I didn't like being a teacher at the front of a classroom. I liked doing it through a computer, and I was really geeky and nerdy, and I loved computers. And so as the e-learning, the whole e-learning industry developed, I was like, oh, this is so cool. This is so cool. And being very nerdy. And so when I finally, it was around 2000, I was working for a consulting company teaching people about big computer systems. And my partner and I decided to stop doing that. And we started an e-learning consulting firm, which is basically, hey, if you give us money, we'll build you the e-learning that you want. Okay. And God, it was awful. So we decided that we were going to provide e-learning to a group of people who weren't being served. So it was really white collar around in the beginning of the millennium. It was really, banks, insurance companies. Right. They were the only people who had e-learning. And so we were trying to figure out how we could do it we were looking at the travel industry. We were looking at doing it for early childhood educators. And then someone suggested trucking. And we We're like, okay. And that's when Carrier's Edge was born. So our real name of our company is Cranial Expansion Learning Solutions and Carrier's Edge. Our lawyer wanted to call it Cranial Explosion. And
Yes. Oh,
and
no.
we thought, no, let's go with expansion. That's better. And so Carrier's Edge is it's kind of the trucking arm. We don't do any other type of
Right.
we don't serve any other industries anymore, but I used to. I've done training for mining, for gas station retail, like retail in general. What else have I done? Railway. I've been in a whole bunch of different industries, which is why trucking doesn't scare me.
So how did you guys? So you don't necessarily have a background in trucking. So how did you guys come across? How did you find trucking as a niche to start training? To
my
roll out this?
partner's brother-in-law worked in the industry, and
Ah,
he introduced us, as as you do. It's sort of like it was really interesting because I had no idea. I really had no idea. We didn't know how trucking even wanted it. Like everybody kept telling us in 2005, drivers can't use computers, which we thought was absolute stupidity. It was like, what do you mean? Like
Well,
how are drivers not using computers?
it was at the time. Okay, we're talking 18 years ago, and we were finishing. You remember, it's been a revolving door for years, but especially then, you had a lot of old boys and girls, but mostly old boys that were probably 68 or 70 years old that had never used a computer in their life. But you had younger people coming in that didn't know how to write, cursive. So it was a great time to do it, obviously.
Well, we
it's
were
definitely a slow adoption process, but
right.
I think now, in current times, I don't think there's anyone out there that doesn't have some type of whether it be a tablet, smartphone,
Yeah.
laptop, any of that stuff, that we kind of have become relying upon technology in order to get things done. And I think that a lot more people maybe have embraced the technology a lot more than what you guys may have found when you guys were first rolling rolling everything out. I think that you definitely got a lot of penetration now.
Oh yeah,
Well,
Rico.
yeah.
Look at e-logs and look at the navigation systems. These. I don't think anybody under the age of 50 years old or 45 knows how to read a map anymore.
I do kind of like being told where to go by my GPS. It's
Well,
a lot
yeah.
easier.
You know
I
what?
mean, I know how to read a map,
I
and
got to tell you, I got to share this. I remember going to do deliveries and, getting a map, and then either the dispatcher, you'd call the customer, and they would give you directions into the plant off the freeway.
Mhm.
That's how it worked. And you had to listen. And then to get out of the plant, you would just do it in reverse. Where you turn left, you turn right. And that's how you got around. And when I tell young people that these days that we have these maps, they just kind of look at me like, what? You guys use maps? How did that work? Well, that didn't always work, but
and an atlas. I
yeah.
remember showing my kids. I have an old atlas that I had from school, and they're just looking at it like, what do you even do with that? It's this book of maps that are not even of my country. Like, what is this? So
So Jane,
yeah.
not to put you on the spot or for you to give us an elevator pitch or anything like that, but if you don't mind, maybe talk to us a little bit about the things that you guys offer over at Carrier's Edge and how it could be beneficial to someone, small fleets that could be using that, how it could benefit them when it comes to insurance or anything else that, that you think would definitely be a good point for them to look into you guys.
Sure. You can find us at carriersedge.com, and you can also sign up for a trial. So if you want to see some of the courses, then we can take a look at that. We don't have a trial of the admin side of it, but you can call up our support then they are very happy to do that for you. But what it does is it gives you, it's month to month. You don't need to, it's a subscription based service, but you don't need to sign up for a year or 2 years, whatever. It's kind of like Netflix, and you can cancel anytime. So we do have companies that will, sign on for 3 months and then leave once they've done everything. But insurance really likes it. We have a lot of partners, insurance partners, and they really like us because it once you take a course, then all of the results and all of the training history is sitting in our system. And even if you stop your subscription, if you come back again, you can get to all of that information because we'll keep it. So we have courses for the US, for Canada. We have it in French and English and Spanish. We have hazmat, hours of service, defensive driving, cargo securement. We have wellness courses, so things like how to good diet, how the basics of exercise. We have a course on mental health. We are coming out with a course on personal security. So basically how to, and I'm just thinking about this one right now because we're just releasing it, but this is not about how to engage someone in a situation. It's how to prevent the situation from happening, all of the things that you can do. So we come out with courses. We come out with courses pretty much as fast as I have a team of writers who are constantly doing it. And every time we write a course, then we're moving it into translation. We also have and we can cater to very small fleets, which is something that our competitors can't do. We don't need you to be huge for us to make money off you. Really, what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide something of value to people that if we have a big enough audience, then it's not about us getting rich off you. It's about spreading the information. And because you have a large enough reach, then that's kind of where we're coming from. So we love having small fleets, and that's really what we're targeting.
So in a nutshell, this is kind of like, if you for lack of a better term, this is more so like continuing education for truckers.
Absolutely. And the thing is, for some things, you need to be retrained all the time. So in Canada, it's WMIS. You have to do that, I think, every 3 years if you're going to be handling goods. It's like HAZCOM in the US. TDG, Transportation of Dangerous Goods, in Canada, you have to have that every 3 years. Hazmat, I think in the US, you only have to get your designation, the thing on your license. Can't remember.
You need a tanker endorsement there for hauling,
right?
Even stuff in totes and things like that. So it all balances out. When and Jane, as you and I spoke, I wasn't even aware of that. I thought Carrier's Edge did something else. I really didn't realize.
So you didn't like me, and you didn't even know me.
Well, I heard. You know what?
Don't you regret it?
Not at all. I heard Jane on a radio show, and I thought, wow, you know what? This is amazing. What she's saying is amazing, and what these people are doing is amazing, because I had no idea. And I think that, from my experiences, having been in this business for 48 years and worked with an awful lot of good carriers, especially the little guys, that the real small ones, when something happened, it's catastrophic. On the other side, when the big guys, I remember talking to an executive at one of the large mega carriers in the U.S., and he said, it's really unfortunate, but in our business, we know that we're going to have a crash every so many hundreds of thousands of miles, and we're going to have a fatality every so many hundreds of thousands of miles. We know that already. Mm-hmm. And smaller carriers don't think of that, but it is it can happen, and I think that you need to prepare for things. And that's what I think this business is all about, is preparing for things before they happen. So if they happen, you you look favorable in front of plaintiff's bar especially if there's an automobile involved. And I think, even for a small carrier as small as one truck, I think that this is a great program just for nothing. First of all, so you do keep up because rules are always changing.
Yep.
And I don't know how many of you have been in the situation where you're dealing with law enforcement and you go, geez, I'm sorry, I really didn't know that, officer. And they always say the same thing. I'm sorry. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. And it
No,
isn't.
no defense.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And, these days, with everything being, between nuclear verdicts and just with protecting yourself so you don't you can keep your company's driving or operating record pristine and your own, even if you're a single operator. I think any knowledge you can gain, whether it's hours of service, because so often people love nothing more than to listen to information at the truck stop. And it's, what, you can get in a lot of doo-doo for listening to bad information. And we've had one fellow on that is a former IC. He goes back so long that he was a former ICC officer. That's Rick Gobble, and his number one thing right now is this whole thing with drivers driving on using personal conveyance, and there's so much bad information on
Yeah.
personal conveyance, and people are listening to idiots. Pardon my language, but my terminology, but in truck stops. Okay,
Yeah.
and they're saying, well, I can do it on personal conveyance, and it's pretty strict. You know what? I wish they didn't have it because it's getting people in trouble.
Yeah, actually, what they recommend is that fleets kind of spell out the exact rules for how you use personal conveyance so that you're not, I can't remember because it's different in the US and Canada. And in the US, if you further your load at all, then you can
Right.
get in trouble. And I
Yeah.
think in Canada it's similar, but it's not quite as strict. But it is tricky, and you kind of have to. You can't. I'm just reading the comments. Yep. Or TikTok, maybe.
Yeah.
But
One of our listeners here just commented, I think you can call the former truck stop lawyers Facebook lawyers now. Okay, you're right.
Yeah. But it doesn't, and everybody needs to refresh themselves at some point.
100%.
There's tons and tons and tons of rules that go on. And, we have a small company, and there are rules about vacation and like all kinds of benefits and things like that, that if you don't know, it's the same thing. You can get in trouble. And you not knowing is not going to be an excuse. So it's really good to just, and especially when the rules change, and the changes are coming. So I don't know, with the ELD mandate in the US and now it's coming to Canada, people have a lot of questions. And one of the biggest issues with the ELD mandate is not having those 4 items that are like the instructions, how to print it off. I can't remember. You have to have a certain amount of paper logs to back you up. But people don't have that, and they're just getting dinged for like just not having paperwork in their cab. And that's a really, that's such a, it's something that can very easily not happen.
Yeah, I'm a big believer personally. They're going to get you on something. Don't give them anything to get you on. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Don't give them a present.
If they really want to get you, they will find something. They'll find a chafed airline or something if they really want to get you. I just saw something earlier in the day, and this was a public transit company, and I think Abbotsford, British Columbia, somewhere out there, and they did an inspection, and most of the buses were out of service.
Right.
So, this sort of thing happens. So at least if they're going to get you, let it be for something that you really didn't see, that chafed airline
Yeah.
that was, underneath the frame that you can't get to. But don't give them anything, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
So and another benefit by having you guys training system and stuff like that. So you have a training course that people can take no matter where they are. They can be anywhere as long
Mhm.
as they have an internet connection. They can be able to get on, take a training course, and then not only take the course but test out on the course and maybe become I guess you would call maybe certified or pass the course or whatever, showing that
Yep.
they have.
We have certificates that, yeah, you can show. We also have, so yes, you can have the certificates, you can print them out. You can also, store the whole thing in the system. And there's other places that you can upload things if you want to. If you want to, have documents or anything like that, then you can upload them to the system as well.
So
So
they
that's
can
a great thing to have. So when it comes time to get ready to renew for insurance or things of that nature, you can you can maybe be able to present that to your agent that, hey, we have training courses that we're
Mhm.
implementing. All of our drivers there, we have a way of showing that everyone participated in the training and they got certified in the training that we provided.
Yep. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And we have a lot of insurance partners. We like to work with them because they're the ones they kind of tell us what's important to drivers and what things are going to be necessary. So they're really, really valuable to have, because I don't come from trucking. I don't know everything about trucking, but all of these, the risk guys are the ones that are super helpful, because they can go through a course that we've written and sort of say, no, you need to, if you're backing up a straight truck, then you have to make sure you remember this. Or if you are, we're working on some tanker courses now. And, one of our question is, and I apologize if it sounds like I really don't know what I'm talking about, but it was like, okay, do you back up a tanker? Can you do that? Or like, can you do a 45-degree in a tanker? Like, is that a good idea? So if you've never driven a tanker, you don't know.
Yeah.
So we have to, because we work with all kinds of different trailers, and that's the other thing that's different with us, is that we're not just cargo van. We have flatbed courses. We're working on tanker courses, auto haulers, and we go out to, when we do photo shoots and things like that, we're going out there and sort of looking at this equipment and getting demonstrations and things like that, and figuring out what specifically happens when you have an auto hauler and you are doing, X, Y, and Z. What are the specific dangers for your type of equipment?
Right.
And so many companies, or so many training companies, will just sort of say, okay, it's kind of like cargo vanish for everybody. It's, it's a truck. It's the same.
No.
And we,
No,
I
no,
know, no.
it definitely helps to have that specific breakdown. And
Mhm.
and I tell you, a lot of times, I guess in the haste of hiring people, a lot of times when you got the transition from dry van to reefer, you'll have a lot of people that'll come from a dry van, start pulling reefers, don't know how to turn the reefer on, don't know how to set the temperature on the reefer, don't understand how to properly load how when getting loaded, what they should should they be checking the temperatures on the product and things of that nature. So there's a lot of different little nuances that definitely from each different little segment type
Yep.
definitely needs to be highlighted and broken down. Sometimes in the haste of trying to get somebody on the road, that may be overlooked in the initial process of bringing bringing someone on board with the company. So that's definitely something that if you guys are providing that type of, if you're getting that granular into the training, that definitely is something that helps out.
Are you
And what
doing
it,
it with refrigerated loads of produce? Or is there a training course on that as well, Jane?
Yeah, we have a food safety for reefers, where we also have one for tankers. So that's the only real reefer specific one that we have. But the temperature, controlling the temperature in the reefer, that's pretty much the basic one.
Now, do you include in that one there about if someone is hauling produce, about checking the temperature of the load?
Oh yeah, that there's different temperature settings for different types of loads. So you may have a frozen one, so you're going to have that. And then if you're hauling fresh fruits and vegetables, then you have different issues with that and then the other problem is if the reefer breaks down and you get to your destination, they're just going to refuse it. So, being able, we have a section, we actually just were talking about this because we were talking about it today because I was explaining a technical thing with how we build the courses, but it was about how to restart the reefer when it's, I can't remember, what do you
run out of fuel?
No, not run out of fuel, but sometimes they stop and then you have to like prime the pump and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's running out of fuel.
Oh, okay. Okay, I write a lot of courses. I'm not fully going to be able to like remember every single thing.
Yeah, that's definitely.
But it's there. I included that. I'm really bad for the whole, but what happens if this happens? But what happens if that happens? But wait a minute, shouldn't we tell people what to do in the case of this? So that's kind of how I've always done training, is trying to find the gaps. And what's interesting about trucking is that trucking those gaps because nothing's written down.
I mean, I think that's beneficial because you guys, you will, at least in your case, you approach it with a fresh set of eyes. So so every little thing that somebody that might take for granted that's been doing it for a while, they may neglect to think that, like you say, that we just get so familiar with it. Oh, everybody knows that, but someone that hasn't experienced it or whatever, they bring a whole new perspective and a fresh set of eyes to it, and which is definitely sometimes needed. And even as older drivers and as seasoned drivers, it stands. Sometimes it's really good for us to be able to have someone new that hasn't experienced that or whatever to make up to kind of bring us back a little bit so that we can maybe explain it or break it down and then, but at the same time, bring it to the forefront of our consciousness as well, so we can be thinking about those things on a more, sometimes we just take things, a little bit for granted, and we may skip a step or two in the process because, we've done this thing a million times, and having a fresh perspective on things definitely is refreshing.
It's Rico, not so much that you.
It's called unconscious competence, according to Zig Ziglar, and I've watched somebody. I watched a nursing team at one of the hospitals here in Toronto, and they were phenomenal. And I said to one of the nurses, "What you're exhibiting here is what the Zig Ziglar calls unconscious competence, and basically autopilot. When this happens, you automatically do that because you've been doing it for so long. You do it without thinking. As compared to somebody that's newer at it, and they will have conscious competence. They have to think about it for a minute. They're conscious of it, and that's the difference. But it's but
they're not skipping steps. They're just doing it, and they don't even know that they're doing it. And one of the things that we do is we basically go, "Hey, wait, that step. What did you just do?" And then the person is trying to figure out what they did. And that's the value that we bring, is that I've just been doing this for so many years that I find those bits of things that unconscious competence that I know how to find it, and I know how to suck it out of your brain.
well, and sometimes we may do skip a step. That's what I mean by the fresh perspective. Because, and especially in a training module, so to speak, because don't get so I would try to remind people, don't get so well, I know what I'm doing and I've been doing this for so long, whatever, that you become beyond reproach. I think that sometimes it takes, like I say, that reminding to make sure that you're going through all of the steps necessary sometimes can definitely have an awakening to a seasoned veteran, and they'll maybe think back and say, you know what, it is a little icy out here. Maybe I shouldn't have these Jake brakes on.
Yeah, you know what?
I mean,
It's funny. That reminds me of a story. A friend of mine who lives in Alberta, and he lived here for a while. He did the same run from Calgary to Revelstoke or somewhere through the mountains every night. 12 months a year, and he'd been doing it for years. And he was an owner operator, lease operator, and he took his wife with on a trip. And on the way there, before they got there, she said, "Andrew, you need to stop this run immediately." And he said, "Why?" She said, "You're too familiar with this road." She was not a truck driver, okay? But these are dangerous mountain roads going through the Rocky Mountains in Canada. And he knew every curve, and he knew, just because he did it, it was habit, where to get out in the other lane, in the other guy's lane, going around certain curves and stuff like that. And he was good at it. Never put a scratch on a truck in the man's life. But he listened to his wife, and he got another job, like another run, because that scared him. He didn't want to have a crash.
Yeah, you gotta have a healthy respect for. Sometimes, and I think that sometimes we forget that we all. I mean, you've seen a truck laid over on the side or whatever, and it may be an older truck or whatever, and it's a lot of times it's seasoned drivers. It's not necessarily someone fresh green out of school. I mean, of course they do it as well, but it always surprises me when I see old Peterbilt that's laid over on the side, and I know nobody fresh out of school is driving that thing.
Yep. In my younger days, when I first started, it was very common for drivers to take pills to stay awake. And one of the problems with the pills was they made you overconfident. And
interesting.
drivers would take, because they were overconfident, they would drive faster. Remember, we didn't have speed limiters back then. And they would take corners much faster than they should have. And that's when they flop them over all the time.
And that's what I mean by having, sometimes that, having that little bit of a training course. If you just happen to this month, the training module just happened to be on making sure that you're taking curves or exiting with exiting on a curve or whatever, and it goes into that. If it brings it to the forefront, and if you're conscious of what it is that you're doing, that kind of sometimes will take you back to your training and everything, and let you know I can't get too comfortable with my equipment to the point, like you were saying, with the guys familiar with the roads. I can't get so familiar with my route that I'm comfortable with the equipment. I'm comfortable with the route that I can just drive this thing with my eyes closed and standing on my head, rubbing my stomach at the same time.
It's interesting because your brain actually, because your brain always wants to take shortcuts. It's always trying to find a shortcut to everything. So what happens is when you get comfortable doing, even if it's a difficult route or, a difficult part of your drive, as you get better at it and you don't have any issues and you don't make mistakes, your brain starts going into automatic pilot. And it's the same thing when you're distracted. It just is not focusing anymore because it thinks it's fine. It's like your brain is like, yeah, it's fine. I've done this a million times, done it. That's when you're going to have it. That is definitely when you're going to have an accident. And one of the things that is good about training is that it makes you stop and go, wait a minute, I got to readjust my brain here and think about, am I making my turns? Am I stopping? Am I putting my foot to rough on the, like all of these little habits that you build up and build up and build up. Training helps you think about it and think about, oh, maybe I should stop that. It's like eating badly as well. It's like all of a sudden you see a show on, like everybody knows how to eat, but you see a show on something that's bad for you and you go, oh wait, I've been eating that a lot, so I will stop doing that.
Yes.
Your brain wants to be in a pattern. It really does. It loves habits. Are great. The reason that habits are so hard to break is because your brain is like, yes, a groove that I don't have to have any stress about going through. I want it to be easy. I want to not expend any energy. And driving is one of those things where it's really dangerous if you do that, but it's so easy to do. So if you can figure out how to change it up, and maybe it's training else, maybe it's doing some other activity, that's going to help you, or watch somebody else doing the thing that you know that you can do. So showing somebody how to back in or that kind of thing will help you reset your brain. And these are things I find fascinating.
You know what? I think you're 100% right on the retraining. And I have to say something that, and some people may be upset. We all complain about, and I see it myself, how bad four wheelers are. The crazy stuff that goes on the trucks cannot drive like that. I live on a 2-lane highway that is posted at 80 kilometers, which is around 50 miles an hour. And the number of cars I see, this is a 2-lane highway doing 2.5, 3 times the speed limit. And, it's insane. These people don't understand the consequence. And the problem is somebody gets their driver's license at 16 or 17 years old once, and they've taken the course, they took young drivers or whatever, and went to driving lessons, and they became a very good driver for as one young fellow said to me one day, was helping me up here. He said, mister, he said, we got better training than you guys ever did, but give us about three months to a year, and we all turn into assholes on the road. That was the kid's exact words, and he was 100% right. So what I think has to happen is I think that car drivers need to be retrained as well. It's too cheap to get a car license here, and there's no value. When I spent about a week and a half once in Hong Kong, and I said to my son, who was going to school there, I said, these guys are the best drivers I've ever seen in my life. And he said, of course they are. Do you have any idea how expensive a driver's license is here, or a license plate, or insurance? These people put huge value on it. And I don't think that our four-wheel motorists put that much value on that license. And that's why they behave the way they do.
I think it's also with four-wheelers there's a couple of things. It's, I want to get everywhere I want to go really fast. And I am also thinking only about my little bubble.
Yep.
So it's really only about me. Whereas when you're in a larger vehicle and you can see all of this stuff, it must be, like the things that get caught on camera, the things that people talk about, the collisions that drivers witness is quite, it's really overwhelming if you think about it. It can be, you can see a lot from up there, but when you're down, you're just kind of bopping along. And so what I saw, especially after all of the pandemic, where everybody was indoors, so the roads were really, really clear. People started driving like maniacs. And
yes.
Oh my God, the driving quality has just gone down so much.
It's like they let monkeys out of the cage and
I
gave them cars.
I'm thinking, holy crap.
One of our listeners is very vocal tonight, and I will I want to read what he said. It's very, this is why commercial pilots must go through recurrent training, even though they have thousands of hours of flight time. He's 100% right.
Hmm.
You're trusting people with an airliner that's got 200 to 300 people's lives, and life is so precious, and it is
Absolutely.
for what. And the same thing though when you're operating any vehicle. A large commercial vehicle or even a small car. People's lives are depending on your behavior and your training.
Absolutely. And the fact is, I haven't had, well, I mean, I haven't been trained. I don't have my CDL, but the last time I had driver training that wasn't me creating it was, when I was 40 years ago.
Right.
So it's, that's another part of it, is that the training that we did get, everybody, there's so many more cars on the road. There's so much more that you have to
Oh
pay
my God, yeah.
attention to, that it's difficult.
Yeah,
But
you know what? I think back to when I first started driving tractor trailer in 1974. It was a different world. That we didn't have nearly the traffic in 1974 that we do 48 years later.
no, absolutely. And what I think is interesting is everybody is talking about autonomous vehicles and how it's going to change, and what's going to happen. And I think that it's not going to be necessarily autonomous vehicles. It's going to be drones that are going to
No.
be interfering. No,
Yeah.
you don't agree?
I agree with the drones. Like, although you know what, Rico's been him and I have been arguing about this for years, and I said, you know what, our grandkids won't even see autonomous vehicles, and you know what, Loblaws, I don't know whether they still are, or it was a
Oh yeah, that's
publicity
right, because
stunt.
they were piloting. Yeah.
That's right. And then Walmart in Bentonville, Arkansas it wasn't, I think maybe it was a class 5 truck running around Bentonville, Arkansas, allegedly with no driver in it. And, they're doing it, but I don't think anybody, although the technology is there, I don't think anybody is brave enough to go and put an 80,000 pound load on a tractor trailer, or like 80,000 pound gross, 45,000 or 44,000 pound load, and set it down the highway with nobody in it. But I do think that the features that have been developed and the
Yes.
safety, all the safety tools that have been developed for autonomous trucks are going to play into making it a much safer vehicle.
And I think what will happen is that there will be a shift between, like, sort of doing a lot of the manual work of driving a car, driving a truck. So we're moving towards automatic, and I know that there's a lot of people out there who still want the all manual, and don't like all the bells and whistles and all of the different autonomous things that kind of come with a truck now. But it lets you focus on the job of making sure it's secured properly, of making sure that you are protecting everyone around you on the road as well. Like, there's a lot of different things that go into being a driver than just sitting in the wheel, making sure that you're going straight. So making sure that when you are approaching a dock and you're at the customer location, that you're not going to be dinging up the truck, you're not going to be hitting anything. There's a lot of intricacies. I think the job is really going to evolve, and that there will be a really interesting move towards how a driver can become kind of like, almost like sort of the captain of a ship, really. I
Yes.
mean, but it's more of you're not actually doing anything, but you're still in charge. The same thing with an airline pilot, where even though you're not necessarily flying the plane, you are in charge, and you have to monitor all of this stuff. And I
Yes.
think that is where it's going to go.
To add to that, Jane, I think that's going to give us the ability to handle more doubles, and perhaps in some regions even triples, because you know what, there's going to be that much less room for driver error.
Yeah, exactly. And so even now, what do you call it when you have the two trailers that are sort of following each other, but they're not connected?
Well, a set of trains. We
No,
call it.
no, no. But when it's
Oh,
autonomous,
pontooning,
Come,
yeah,
platooning,
pontooning. I think
platooning.
pontooning. Yeah, platooning. Wait, it's
Yeah,
platooning.
platooning.
Yeah, platooning is a really cool innovation, I think. That
Yeah,
is, I mean, I can totally see having to write, having to create training for what to do around platooning vehicles, like how to make sure, like what happens when one kind of drops off. I don't know.
well, yeah, it's a brave new world out there, and it's exciting. And I think that right now, I think we're having the problem with, with getting people to come into the industry because it's getting sexier for the next generation. For us old guys, you know what, having these new, Tesla trucks, things like that. Where most of the old guys are poo-pooing them, and I don't want anything to do with electric trucks. Give me my diesel. But these younger people that are just coming up, and they're in their teens or early 20s, that we need to bring them into the trucking industry, or there'll be nobody to do this work. And I think that the new trucks, apparently Tesla is starting to put them on the road. I read an article, I think it was last week, that PepsiCo is running 3 Tesla trucks on 500-mile trips. And, that's a big thing. If those trucks actually do this, that's a game changer. And you may not get a driver in his 60s that wants to drive that truck, but you'll sure as hell get somebody in their 20s or 30s, or in Rico's case 40s, that can't wait to get his hands on one of those electric trucks.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a cool looking truck, Chuck. You got to admit it's a cool looking little truck. I mean, not necessarily from a look standpoint, but the technology that's involved in it. It's kind of fascinating. I definitely would. I'm interested to see how this gets pulled off. And they news came out a little earlier this week that they may have found some type of way to do some type of nuclear fusion to help
Yes, very cool.
wean off of the fossil
Also,
fuels and things of that nature. So we may be, because initially, there was a lot of pushback on whether or not the grid was going to be able to sustain if that type of a rollout of those type of trucks and recharging those type of batteries and stuff like that. So it's some fascinating stuff that might be coming down the pipe.
You know what? With nuclear energy, and Ontario has been nuclear energy for, I think I was talking to somebody that had worked at Ontario Hydro, and I think since like 1999 or 2000, we don't burn coal. Unfortunately, down in the Ohio Valley, they're still burning coal for electricity. So that really doesn't help the issue. But we are having. I think you would have to really be blind and not to agree that we're starting to have some issues with climate change, and it is partially because of what we're doing to this earth. So yeah, you know what, we do have to do better, and if we can start running large trucks on electricity that doesn't pollute, that's a game changer.
yeah,
But
that fusion thing is really cool.
Yeah.
before we get accused of being tree huggers around here, Jane, I'd like for you to be able to tell I'm looking at the time. I'd like for you to be able to tell people how they can find you, how they can get in contact with you, and anything else you'd like to say before we close out.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Rico. You can find us at carriersedge.com, CARRIERSEDGE. We can also find us on Twitter and Facebook. The other thing that I just want to get in there really, really quick, which is a whole other topic, is that we're right in the middle of best fleets to drive for. So if you have if you're interested in that, go to bestfleetstodrivefor.com or Best Fleets to Drive For on Facebook. We choose a top 20 best fleets, and sometimes they're contractor fleets, sometimes they're company driver fleets, and that's kind of what we do in our our spare time. But the our main reason for being is Carrier's Edge, and it is all online driver training all the time. And it is not just that, but we also have surveys that you can give to people. You can do baseline testing. So if you don't want to do a course and you just want to do the test, you can do that too.
Wow.
Yeah, so we do have a lot of different different training related things that you can do. You can upload your own content. So if you have a video that you want people to see through the system so that you can track it, you can do that too. We also host Truckers Against Trafficking. I don't know if you guys know of them, but it's a really good program. We have the Truckers Against Trafficking videos on our site as well. So we have a whole host of different types of training that we also have a lot of webinars and podcasts and things like that. So if you want to listen to us talk about it and, figure out if you think you like what you hear, then come and give us a listen.
Jane, on your best fleets to drive for, is that on both sides of the border, or is that just Canadian?
It is both sides of the border. Yep. So I've had to learn like all kinds of, I have to learn the difference between a 401k and an RSP and health benefits in the different countries. It's crazy.
To any of even our small carriers that are listening to this show, if you can subscribe to this best fleets to drive for, and you are nominated for one of them, that's a real feather in your cap, especially for recruitment. That makes things. Only good carriers get to fly that banner.
Yes, but for best fleets, a driver has to nominate. We don't want the staff nominating, and we have said, to certain companies like, no, get a driver. You got to have one driver who likes you.
They've got to be drivers that like where they're working. They're
absolutely,
they're not going to endorse a company where they're mistreated or that doesn't look after their best interests and doesn't look after safety as being the most important function in running a trucking company.
Oh yeah, and there's we see and even really, so we had an overall winner who was 20 trucks or 25 trucks. So they don't have to be big companies to do well in the best fleets to drive for. They do have to have the right idea about drivers, and that their drivers are not sort of this separate group of people who just operate your trucks. They're part of your company, and you should be treating them like you want them to be part of your organization. And
yes.
And that's kind of where we take what we learned from the best fleets and we put it into our training products. It's really kind of our secret weapon, is that we know so much about what's going on in the industry just from talking to so many different carriers. And
so do you share this? This is great. This is great intel. So do you take these best practices and are sharing this with your clients? Is there a module that a manager or a director of a trucking company can subscribe to improve how he's doing things as far as from the HR factor?
There are, the way that training courses work is that you take a training course on a certain topic. The process of best fleets, of becoming better as an organization, is an ongoing thing. And so the best thing that you can do, even if you're a small fleet, so you have to have 10 trucks or more. So 10 trucks, if you have 10 tractor trailers, not 10 straight trucks. If you have 10 tractor trailers, you can be part of it. What the benefit is, answering the questions that we give you, and then looking at your answers. And then what we do is we publish, when we do the overall, or we do the awards, we publish the scores of the top 20. And then you can see what they're doing and compare it to what you're doing. So it's a different kind of learning. It's still learning, but it's more of you are self-evaluating all the time. And that process of self-evaluation is really, really powerful if you recognize that you always have something to learn. And that's, I think, the thing that is going to take you from, it's okay, to I'm amazing. Like, that is really, really, that humility of being able to say, okay, I could be better at this, really makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So,
You know,
so we have tons and tons and tons of stuff about Best Fleets and our Best Fleets to Drive for our website, on the Facebook page. We do podcasts and webinars. And so if you're interested in that, or interested in stealing ideas from people, then come and steal some free ideas.
Well, you know what? It's about sharing knowledge. That's what this whole Rates and Lanes podcast, that's what this is all about, is just sharing knowledge. And that's one of the things I was talking to, that dinner with someone that's been a guest on this show many times, Ray Wieneman, who sells trucks. And he said, I love the trucking industry, he said, because there's something about truckers. They're very open about stuff. And I said, historically, we've been very good about sharing best practices ever since I got in it. Nobody hides anything. Nope. You go to these meetings and you share ideas, and you share ideas with your competition. There's not a lot of businesses that do that.
Yeah, it's something special about trucking, for sure.
There really is.
Well, Jane, we definitely appreciate you for taking time out of your schedule to come on the show and join us tonight and tell us all about Carrier's Edge. We definitely are grateful for you doing so.
Thank you.
Everybody, we got her website linked down in the comment section. So it's linked. If you would like to go over and check them out, all you have to do is click on the link, take you directly over there to them. And Chuck.
Yeah, if anybody needs anything from me, they need some advice, or they want to get set up with Traffics, I still know some people there, obviously. Feel free to send me an email with your phone number, and I'll do whatever I can to help you. And if it's just some information you need, or you need some help with your business, reach out, Chuck@Traffix, TRAFFIX.com, and I'll help you with anything I can. With that, Rico, I'll let you back her in a hole for another week.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you guys for taking time out of your schedule. Remember, like, share, subscribe. If you found this information helpful, send it out to someone else that you know that you think that might be able to benefit from it. But do those things for us. That helps us get out into the YouTube algorithm and all that stuff that they do on the backside of Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. Or they just tell us if we want to get more traction, the more likes and the more shares and comments that we get, the better. So if you guys can help us out by doing that, we definitely appreciate it.
Help make us famous.
It's the holidays. People are more abundant out on the highways. Guys, be safe out there. Take your time. Inclement weather's kicking in all across the country now. So definitely take your time. Be safe. Stay healthy. Keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise. And God willing, we'll talk at your same time, same place next week. God bless you and good night.
Catch on the flip flop. God bless. Good night.